I would like to thank Dr. Shinu Abi and all the organizers and the REVA University for inviting me here, and it's great to see all of you. So in 2005, I was considered a very crazy guy at the IBM TJ Watson Research Center because I was a handful of people who started a new group and started into a new area of research called services research. People started asking, what is services research in computer science? Is it even an area of research? Does it have any value? We have done research in nanotechnology, in systems, in software. What is this? What research can you really do in services? And that was 2005, and certainly we've come a long way since then, and now I have the privilege of leading the Global Technology Services Labs, which is the largest IT services and the leading IT services lab in the world. So what I'd like to talk to you for the next few minutes is the future of services computing. We have come a long way. Where are we going next? What are the big forces driving us? And as you can see, it's about cognitive, hybrid, automated, open, serverless. So I'll touch on all these themes. So the IT industry has been going through and continues to go through many waves, right? Waves of change. And certainly, when we started this whole computer revolution, it was all about optimization. It was all about large-scale transactions. It was about complex computing and building complex systems. And then we went into an era of globalization, right? And it was more about the World Wide Web emerging, e-business, and this whole notion of a smarter planet emerged from that. And even as we were doing all this, it was about more and more systems integration and linking systems, accessing systems more. But what the web did is really made everything a service, right? And so in the last 15 years or so, it's really been about services. And I think my move into that area was very timely, but because everything has become a service. Computing has become a service, software has become a service, systems have become a service, even applications have become a service, and how applications use computing went into cloud. You could get computing as a service and use it and get rid of it, but it went even deeper. And what is happening now is serverless, right? Even an application, as it executes, during execution time itself, it gets the resources it needs as a service, and then it doesn't use them anymore. So everything has become a service, and this wave, it's all about digitization, it's all about data, it's all about intelligence. So it's this really a cognitive era that we are now in. And so what is this meaning to us, and what does it mean to the world? So as Global Technology Services Labs and as this business of Global Technology Services, which is a big business now, we are responsible for managing the mission-critical infrastructure of the major industries and the biggest players of major industries across the world, right? So you can see many interesting statistics here, right? Whether it's insurance, banking, telecom, automotive, retail, airline, these are some big examples, right? And how much goes through our global technology services? Over 60% of the total banking industry, 53% of the total industry of telecom, and 60% of automotive, and so on, right? All these transactions, all these mission-critical applications and is being run by us, right, and being managed by us. So this is what we are doing, and this is a big part of what IT and what computing technology is doing for services, right? Running these kinds of systems which have to be 24 hours, all the time available, everything, their own industry becoming a service and becoming global, and everything is digitized, right? So how does this era run? And some of the biggest forces that you see here as we look at this era are, one, it's all about data. The data has become the biggest fuel of all industries. Everything is being transformed because it's all about understanding their own data, the customer data, the market data, and everything being run through as e-business and through your mobiles. And so it's customer data multiplied to an extent that we have never experienced before, right? So at 2020, we are going to see 44 zettabytes of data. And a third of all this data will pass through cloud. Right? And cloud itself is a huge revolution that's been happening. That is another tsunami that has hit us and is continuing to drive how things work. And if you look at it from a market perspective, it is $270 billion market by 2020, by next year, right? And it's been growing at a 30% compound annual growth rate. And it's not just people. People now are connected, all of us, with our WhatsApp, with our social media, with Slack, we know what's going on. 2.9 billion active social media users by next year. But it's not just people, right? It's things. And so 50 billion connected things by next year, by 2020. And behind that, and of course that's driven, mobiles are a given in that. So a part of that, and 6 billion in a $7 billion population world, more than 6 billion cell phones. So it's really everybody having mobile phones. And the latest, we just heard about security, the blockchain coming in a big way. That's another huge trend. $2.3 billion by 2020 and growing to over $20 billion by 2023. So these are the whole slew of forces, and all of them coming together and unifying and interplaying is making the market and the dynamics very challenging and very interesting, and huge opportunity for those who can play in this. So what does that mean to us? And how is the whole industry changing? One of the big ways is cognitive computing, right? Cognitive computing or artificial intelligence and its use in scaling, accelerating, and improving and enhancing human ability has been the biggest trend over the last few decades, and certainly has, with the level of computing and data processing ability that we have now, has come to a different level of maturity. But as you see in this timeline here, it started certainly from the time Turing thought of the Turing test for artificial intelligence to John McCarthy coining the word AI, and went through various phases. Certainly we have played, as IBM, a big role in this, all the way from 1997, reaching a huge milestone when we had the first chess champion computer, beating Garry Kasparov, and another huge milestone in 2011 with when we had our Watson system compete in the biggest quiz show in the United States and beating the biggest champions, right, in Jeopardy. And since then, we've been applying it in various ways to cancer care, even being used here in India in various hospitals, including Manipal, and applying it to various areas, right? Be it banking, be it fashion industry, be it cooking. It goes all over how we have been since applying Watson. And this year, in March this year, we unveiled our project Debater. So a Watson system engaging in complex debate with humans, right? And so this is how cognitive computing is evolving. But the biggest things this means to us is, one, what does this really mean in practice? It means we have computing systems that can build knowledge. We have computing systems that can understand natural language, and computing systems that can interact with humans in much more natural ways. This means for enterprises, they can do discovery, they can discover what is going on, they can make decisions. So we have computing systems that can make decisions, and not stop there, but engage with people or take action. So engagement and action. So all these are the implications and practical realities being realized by cognitive computing. So what does this mean for the kind of industries we've been talking about, right? One big thing is this intersection of cognitive computing and cloud computing. These are a very rich intersection because data is processed at a scale not possible before because of cloud computing. Data is born in the cloud, and much more data evolves in the cloud and cannot be dealt with in any other way except with cloud itself. And so there's this very interesting interaction. And what it means in practice is, for a long time we have had systems of engagement. All major industries have very complex systems on premise that capture all their engagements, right? All their systems of record, all their records, right? All the transactions, all the things that they've been doing, all the data about every customer, about every transaction, whether it's in retail, whether it's in airline, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in banking, and so on. They have huge systems of record and computing systems that understand and process this data. But now it has become an e-business world, an electronic world, right? With everybody having a web presence, mobile presence, so huge amounts of data coming from the cloud, born in the cloud, and engaging with people. And this is systems of engagement, and they have their own data. And this intersection is really the intersection of cognitive and cloud. And that's leading to very new systems of insight. When cloud started, people thought of it as it's CapEx reduction. Instead of buying a computer, I am getting it as a service. That was Cloud 1.0. But very soon, people realized that the biggest advantage was not CapEx, because most of IT expense, 80 to 90% of the expense is actually in operations, in OpEx. So how do you really transform operations is the biggest opportunity. And so DevOps, agility, that became the Cloud 2.0. But it's gone beyond that. It's really about industry redefinition and industry transformation, right? So data originating in the cloud, being processed in the cloud, and new kinds of insights, expanding markets, driving disruption. This is the whole industry transformation that is Cloud 3.0, and this is being powered by these systems of insight. So this whole intersection, this cognitive, I would call hybrid cloud solutions, and I'll get to you in a second about why it is hybrid, because cloud is by its very nature and by its very emergence, very hybrid. And these cognitive hybrid cloud solutions are transforming all industries. Many examples here, right? From education to healthcare to retail, how business is done, and telecom, of course, e-banking and news, every aspect of it. And for us in India and in developing countries, it's even more so. The impact is even more so for several reasons. Because on the one hand, we are leapfrogging, because we are directly jumping into the cloud era, just as we jumped into the mobile era. The cognitive revolution is still in its infancy, and we are as well positioned as anybody else to lead this whole revolution. So that's a huge implication for us. But it also is a huge implication on how it changes society, how it transforms emerging markets like ours. So the implication of this cognitive and hybrid cloud is huge for a country like India. And while that is happening, with a company like ours and many of us who are in IT services, a lot of it is, what does this mean to IT service providers? And how does this, what does this whole revolution mean? And for us, that has translated into what we call the IBM Services Platform with Watson, right? And so basically, we are saying, today's company, as I said, we are the people behind this huge industries all across the world. How do you keep them up? How do you keep them running all the time? And how do you really transform them? So for that, we have several things that are important. First, all the IT environments are as a service. So we have to manage this IT as a service environment, which is across multiple clouds and multiple systems, on-prem, off-prem, and so on. But it's all about the data that comes from these systems, complex, growing, hybrid, and how do you make sense of this data and manage and optimize these IT systems so that the business is run optimally. So that's really the challenge that we have. And this is where we have been applying Watson among its many manifestations. We are applying it here in terms of how do you design systems, how do you have automated management of services, and how do you optimize these automated services. And we have built the world's largest data lake for IT, and we are continually learning from this data and running automated services. So we have over 1,000 major customers, major industry clients automated across the world, and this is a growing number of incidents and data that we are processing every day into most recently crossing the 25 million mark there. So let's, what is it, as this is happening, what are industries most worrying about? If we fast forward to 2019 and look at what is the reality today. When I started working in cloud a few years ago, this was something that I had to explain and say why it was important and so on, but it's a very clear reality today, right? And it's really a mix of, yes, there is a traditional on-premise environment, servers and mainframes and so on, and very large private clouds, because everything is virtualized and run as private cloud on-premise. But now, more, even industries like banking, even industries like healthcare are moving a lot of workloads into public clouds. And public clouds and off-premise dedicated clouds and public clouds, and where they get both infrastructure and software as a service. So it's truly a hybrid world, but what was not the case even 2-3 years ago. Today, the reality is multi-cloud. So 94% of the enterprise customers are using multiple cloud environments, not one cloud, it's multiple clouds. And enterprise customers are using more than one public cloud provider, right? And so a lot of different issues today. How do you move across clouds? How do you connect? And how do you have consistency of management? So the services computing is all about consistency in integration. So, and once you do that, once you look at that, the biggest challenge becomes how do you do this consistently across, and how do you have avoid lock-in, and how do you have flexibility? So the biggest word in services today is open. And so an open approach to hybrid multi-cloud is critical, and that's one of the reasons why we as IBM have really acquired Red Hat, and now we are a joint entity, right? Because it's all about open. So we want a platform, all the red that you see beneath, starting from Red Hat Enterprise Linux, is a common denominator across wherever you're running, right? Whether you're running on-prem or on any cloud. And then you want to go up, you want to have OpenStack, you want to have open containerized platforms today, so you have OpenShift and so on. So you want to have cloud-enabled services for journey to cloud. So these are cloud-enabled workloads, and where you are cloud-native and born in the cloud kind of services, you want that as well. So you want to have both of those extremes of the spectrum dealt with, and across the board, all the way from how do you advise enterprises to move on to cloud, how do you move them to cloud, how do you build services on cloud, and how do you manage these services on cloud, right? So this is what we are looking at. And therefore, a big focus for us is a multi-cloud management system. It says basically you have data lake, and analytics, upon which you have multi-cloud operations. You can run anywhere, and you have orchestration across all these services and business management, and one user experience. Whether you're a developer, you're an IT operations person, or a business person, or a CIO running across, you have your view of your business, and you're able to deal with this across the board, right? And the biggest thing as we try to do this is getting actionable insights from operational data across these multi-cloud environments. So all the way from how we collect, discover, analyze, and act, right? And the whole spectrum, and bringing that together effectively in IT operations is the biggest thing that we are doing today. How do you drive these actionable insights from operational data, right? And this is not just about operations, and the previous talk was all about security. That's very important, right? So one of the things that this kind of intelligence and security and orchestration allows us to do is build what we call a security immune system. And you can see examples of that in our stalls outside, both in analytics and in security. And so it's really like treating the whole system as a collection of organs, each with its own immune system, and at the center of it, a security, orchestration, and analytics capability that drives this immune system. So this is what we're doing. And so what this all translates into is artificial intelligence-driven AI operations, right? And this is something that every industry, they're running it, and IT services behind it, they're saying, is my business running properly? Is any significant issue that I have to address? Are there any insights that I can use to optimize my delivery? And most importantly, if there's an alert, if there is a problem, how do I deal with it, right? And so here is an example, right? A global transportation company, 160 countries, hundreds of thousands of cars, and so on, right? And if you have the person who is returning the car and they have a mobile application running, saying, okay, the car has been returned, all these steps that it has to go through, right? It has to go through a mobile application for rental processing, there's a wireless network carrier, telecom carrier, corporate network, it goes, and finally there's a mainframe-based transaction. That whole thing happens. When you look at it, when there's a problem, they don't know where to go. There's a tunnel vision, there's a vision into each of those individual areas, many service providers, many different monitoring systems. How do you get the end-to-end visibility? And how do you get very quickly to the problem that is there and the action that needs to be taken? This is the kind of challenges that we are addressing through AI operations. So finally, I talked about cognitive, I talked about hybrid, I talked about open. The latest is the serverless as well, which I briefly touched upon. But as we look at services, one of the biggest things that we are finding is what the customer cares about, what industries care about is a dramatic improvement in time to value. So with the complexity that we're dealing with, even with moving to public cloud and so on, many of the services take weeks to months to set up, whether it is setting up complex applications or systems or building or decommissioning or maintaining the health, security. All these take very long times to manage. And so how do you drive a 10 to 100x improvement in this kind of end-to-end time to value? And these are the 7 keys that I'd like to emphasize. It's very important that we, as a services computing, we need to really focus on that end-to-end outcome. And even in traditional areas where we have traditional IT, the thinking has to be cloud native today. So everything has to be driven with a cloud native thinking. And it's also very important to decouple state and function. And this is why what happens versus what action is taken has to be decoupled. And this is where the decoupling allows you to leverage open technologies and really allows you to have the actions as being serverless. And this is all driven by service reengineering, and the mindset has to be intelligent automation first. So, and finally, this also means that everything becomes code, and even administration of IT becomes driven by people who can code and who are engineers. And the latest term is the site reliability engineering, right? So it's the SRE-driven model and a community model of how we run services. So this is the new era we have come into. It certainly means a complete change in the job profiles of those who work in the services industry. People worry about AI. The history has shown, and it's my experience today as well, that it's only multiplying jobs. It is multiplying the right kind of jobs. The number of people who can deal with big data, who can deal with cybersecurity, the people who can do SRE, who can deal with the complexity that we are taking and driving this next revolution, those are the people we need. But certainly mundane tasks are being automated away, right? So this is what is happening. And finally, I would say the future of services computing is here in India and in the emerging markets. And this is something not just from my IBM hat. Over the last 8 years, we have been running this IEEE conference on cloud computing in emerging markets. And this is a services computing conference, really. And this is where we see the change and the drive that is happening, whether it is startups, whether it is the new kind of services and where's the new talent, or starting from children to all kinds of entrepreneurs, really defining the new wave that we are talking about, which is cognitive, hybrid, automated, open, and serverless. So the next version of the conference is next month, so I hope to see some of you there. But with that, I'll stop. I know we took a little bit of time here, but happy to answer questions on this exciting topic. Thank you for listening.
We'll just take one question.
You mentioned about the decoupling of state and function to deal with heterogeneity. Can you just give one particular example of that?
So it's many times, many of our systems have workflows and the action that needs to be taken with, in relation to a workflow integrated. So there are systems where you know that there is a certain, you have a workflow. You're saying when you are in this state of the process, then you have to take this action, and it is coded and coupled together. But decoupling those two and saying, and you can have open technologies supporting these independently. So any action that is taken is completely stateless and is not worried about where you are in the workflow, and that is completely decoupled, allows you to deal with complexity like you have never been able to do before, and gives you so much more flexibility and freedom, and equally easily deal with traditional computing environments to multiple cloud providers. So that's what I was referring to.